Even before the doors sighed at Serdica, I smelled bleach cutting the warm metal air. Night shift quiet makes every odor a sentence. This one said trouble. The driver waved me down, whispering about a seat that wouldn't latch. Rows of blue plastic faced each other like gritted teeth. A family of 3 watched. I knelt. The seat's panel was loose, screw heads chewed shiny by a hurried hand. When I touched the plastic, cold seeped through my gloves as if it hoarded winter. Maintenance cavities are where lost phones and candy wrappers go to die, not people. Still, the smell insisted. I slid my multi-tool, pried the panel, and hair slithered out. My stomach tightened into a fist. I kept my voice steady, asked the driver to clear the carriage and hold the train. Doors hissed again, closing on the last complaint. The panel came free with a soft pop. Inside, the hollow was stuffed like a suitcase. Knees folded hard, arms bound, face pressed to the plastic shell. She looked young enough for homework. A red shoelace dangled near her ear, almost cheerful. Adhesive ringed her wrists, the edges dirty from a fight. Her cheek was bruised in a crescent, as if by a ring. I checked for pulse out of habit and mercy. Nothing, but the skin still held a whisper of warmth that made everything feel minutes too late. The bleach failed to hide copper. My radio crackled loud in the dead car. I called it in. Probable homicide. Female unknown, preserved scene. The driver answered with a tremor, suddenly older. When I looked back at the cavity, I noticed scuff marks inside, pale arcs on blue plastic. She hadn't only been hidden there. She had tried to turn that coffin into a door. By the time the next train was turned at the previous station, the platform lay bare under hard lights. Homicide took jurisdiction the second they heard the cavity story. Detective Rado Kolev arrived in his raincoat that never saw rain, hair neat despite midnight. He eyed the seat like it might answer if he stared long enough. Petya from forensics taped the car and laid brown paper paths. She photographed everything, the shoelace, the scuffs, the bleach bottle print smeared under the seat frame like a ghost. The driver, still pale, told me maintenance flagged that seat yesterday for a loose latch. He couldn't say who handled it. Contractors rotated so often that names blurred. I crouched again, reading the plastic like a page. The screws were at factory. 2 were mismatched. Someone in a hurry, without the right kit, forced this coffin shut. Rado leaned over my shoulder. "You see adhesive too?" he asked. I nodded. Not tape I knew from the depot thicker, with cloth backing, strong enough to hold a fight together. Petya lifted the girl with careful hands, speaking in numbers. Paper rustled. We folded the panel back and stood with the raw absence, a square of darkness where she'd been. The medical examiner, Dr. Stoyanova, touched the bruised cheek. Preliminary lividity consistent with compression. Time of death likely within 6 hours, she murmured. Call me when we have her name. I bagged the shoelace. Red, flat, no fray, a knot hardened by liquid. It might belong to a sneaker still missing, or be a marker tied on by someone who wanted to remember. Rado gestured toward the platform cameras. If she boarded tonight, we'll see her, he said. I looked at the hollow seat and thought about coffins that roll through the city every 7 minutes. The control room sits above the city like a quiet brain. Banks of screens bloom with moving dots. The operator rewound the night for us without comment. We watched Serdica from 2 hours earlier. Commuters streamed and thinned. At 23:11, she appeared, denim jacket, black dress, white sneakers, hair in a low knot. She kept her head down until a man in a high-waist vest approached. He gestured toward a seat on the arriving train, the car we later sealed. She nodded, hesitant. The angle was bad. His face stayed partly shadowed by the pillar. The vest bore the Metro logo, but hung loose, like it belonged to someone else. Onboard cameras gave us little. Lens reflections ate detail. We saw him lead her down the aisle. She sat, he hovered, then crouched. The doors shut, and they vanished into tunnel. 2 stops later, he exited alone, carrying a small black toolbox. He kept to the edge of the frame, never rushing, never curious. Professional calm always looks like innocence. I asked the operator for pulls at each station they passed. Rado noted timestamps, building a spine. The last clear image of her alive was a ghost across glass. Petya checked the toolbox brand on the end frame. Pavlik Pro, sold in every hardware stall. Not special, but he carried it like habit had made it heavy in the same place. We printed stills, the vest, the posture, the line of jaw beneath the shadow. I felt the tug of wanting to name a stranger, just to have somewhere to start. We'll canvass maintenance firms, Rado said. I nodded, pocketing the stills. Somewhere in this city, a fake vest hung to dry, and a toolbox waited beside a bed that someone slept through. The morgue's fluorescents make everyone look like newsprint. Dr. Stoyanova had the girl on a steel table, wounds speaking in small blue vowels along her skin. No wallet, no phone, no jewelry, beyond a thin silver ring on the right hand. The ring wasn't the bruise maker. It carried a tiny nick where teeth had once tested it. Under the nails, Petya found cloth fibers matching the tape. She plucked them like lint and sealed them. On the forearm, faint grid marks hinted at woven binding. Strangulation with compression, the doctor said. No sexual assault. Adhesive residue mouth and wrists. Defensive bruising. She was alive when the tape went on. Her voice stayed even, like weather. We ran missing persons from the last 24 hours and found 3 possibilities. 2 checked in quickly. The third was a university student named Mila Strateva. Her roommate hadn't seen her since dinner. Rado called the roommate, who cried and then breathed into the phone until words lined up. Mila studied architecture. She liked trains because they showed the city's bones. In the pocket seam of the denim jacket, Petya found a transit receipt, sodden but legible. Single ride validated at 2309 Serdica. Ink bled like a confession, but kept the time. I looked again at the seat panel. Inside, a service sticker read Metrotech Service, a number smudged by heat and friction. The sticker's edges were clean where a hand braced. We pulled maintenance rosters for the line. Contractors shifted weekly like playing cards. One name repeated on late shifts. Borislav Vidnov, subcontracted crew lead, certified for seating assemblies. Rado drummed a pen. We start gentle, he said. I stared at the hollow seat in the evidence photos and felt the city rearrange itself around a stranger's last narrow room. Borislav Vidnov lived in a block that smelled of plastudust and warmed cabbage. He opened the door in socks and a t-shirt, toolbox at his feet, like a dog that behaved. He looked 50 from the neck, 30 from the eyes. The toolbox was Pavlik Pro, scuffed at the corners, the handle worn to a pale streak. Rado held up a still. You on the green line last night? Borislav squinted, then shook his head. Blue line, Romeo, stop. Doors jammed. I signed off at 1. He slid his shift sheet across the table. The roster matched. Blue line, sensor fault. He kept looking at the still like it held a different answer if he blinked slower. Anyone borrow your vest? I asked. He huffed. I keep spares. Contractors misplace them. But I log everything. That vest has a black mark on the collar from sealant. He flipped open the toolbox. Wrenches and foam cutouts. A coil of cloth tape with a brand I didn't recognize. A marker rubbed to a stub. He didn't flinch at Petya's swabs. That tape, I said. He shrugged. Every crew uses it. Strong, cheap Bulgarian. It will mend a radiator hose or shut a mouth, he added without smiling. Rado asked about the seat latch at Sirica. Borislav rubbed his jaw. Loose hinges all week. A retrofit batch was bad. We reported it. Some seats wobble even after service. He lifted his phone and showed photos from last month. Panels off, guts of seats like open shells. In one, a sticker matched our trains. He'd been there, just not last night. As we left, he met my eyes. People notice vests, he said. They don't notice faces. Anyone can look like me if they stand where I stand and carry a box. Mila's roommate, Vesi, led us into a tidy flat smelling of acrylic and coffee. Sketches crowded the walls, lines searching for buildings that hadn't learned their names yet. On Mila's desk lay a model of a train interior, cut from foam board. One seat tilted to show the hollow space. Arrows and notes in neat handwriting mapped forces and failures. Vesi wiped her eyes with the sleeve of a sweater large enough to hide in. She was working on a project about transit furniture, she said. Ergonomics, maintenance, cost. She said seats talk. Rado photographed the model and the notes. I picked up a sneaker from under the bed. White, red shoelaces. One lace was missing, the eyelets empty like a mouth that swallowed a word. She sometimes tied her hair with a lace, Bessie said. She lost hair ties. The red ones made her easy to spot. The sentence landed like a stone in a pond already thick with ripples. Her phone was missing. Her laptop was open to an email thread with Professor Sabev and someone from Metrotech. They discussed shadowing maintenance crews during late shifts. She loves the metro at night, Vesey said. She says the city feels honest then. Last message to Vesey was at 10. She was going to Serdica to watch rider behavior. Rado took the laptop for imaging, careful with the model. The project timeline had deadlines in red, one circled this week with a shaky hand. I asked for photos of Mila. In every shot, she wore plain clothes and that quiet half-smile of people who listen more than they speak. On the way out, Bessie stopped us. She trusted uniforms, she whispered. She said they have rules. The elevator ride down felt longer than the building could possibly hold. Professor Sabev's office looked like it had been dismantled and reassembled slightly wrong. Books leaned as if they shared a secret. He watched us with the restless patience of overworked graders. He confirmed the partnership with Metrotech. Students observe maintenance workflows, he said, with permission, under supervision. Schedules are late because work is late. He pulled a folder from a drawer and laid out forms. Consent, safety briefings, a letter of introduction with Mila's name typed cleanly. A signature near the bottom belonged to Metrotech's operations liaison. The name read Nikola Danev. He handles crew rotations, Sabev said. Efficient, clipped. He promised vests and hard hats for identification if they walked the platform. Rado checked dates. The letter authorized observations starting this week. Another sheet showed a time slot. Serdica, 23 o'clock to midnight. Focus on seating modules and fasteners. Mila was careful, the professor said. She planned questions, nothing confrontational. She had a way of making people explain their work, as if the city listened. He rubbed his jaw. She didn't come today. We asked for emails. He forwarded the chain. An automated Metrotech message set the meeting and copied Danev. A follow-up, an hour before, confirmed. Meet at Serdica Concourse. Look for a high-vis vest. I imagined the station like a stage. A young woman waits, looking for safety made visible. A vest approaches and becomes a door she walks through without knowing it locks behind her. Sabev sighed. I warned her to stay in public view, he said. But students hear opportunity when you say caution. He looked older than his photo on the wall. On the way out, I lingered over a framed drawing of an empty train. The seats in pencil had weight, like bodies had been there and left intentions behind. Metrotech's office sat above a depot yard, concrete and glass that reflected nothing kindly. Nikola Danev met us in a conference room, shaped like a hush, tie straight, smile brief. He confirmed the schedule. We expected Miss Strateva at 2300, he said. Crew lead Borislav Vidnov was assigned blue line. Observation would be on green. Different teams. He slid a printed itinerary across the table detailing meeting points, safety protocols, and visual identifiers. Vests marked observer in black tape, extra hard hats from a cabinet. Who was to receive her? Rado asked. Technician Miroslav Gachev, Danev said, checking his screen. Miro knows procedures. He was routed to Serdica for a seat latch complaint earlier. He pulled access logs. Miro's badge pinged Serdica at 2240, out at 2258. No later pings. He recorded an early fix, Danev added, frowning. I asked about vests. Inventory showed one missing from the cabinet since last week. Noted, but unresolved. Contractors borrow and forget, he said. We invoice. It happens. Rado requested Miro's address. He's on shift now, Danev said. Blue line emergency response. We can radio him to report after. The answer was practiced and smooth. Petya asked for toolbox specs. Our kits vary, Danev said. Pavlik Pro is common. Labels wear off. His gaze slid past us to the window, where yard lights hummed. Before we left, I pressed the issue. A student was told to look for a vest, I said. Someone in a vest met her. She died. The conference room air didn't move. Danev's jaw set. We cooperate fully, he said. If someone used our uniform to commit a crime, we want him more than you do. His words were right. The tone felt rehearsed. We met Miro in a tunnel turnout where the air tasted of brake dust. He wore a vest scuffed at the shoulders and a grin that tried to be friendly. He denied meeting Mila. My badge pinged earlier, he said, tapping our printout. Latch at Serdica. Done before 11. After that, I switched to blue line callouts. His toolbox was Pavlik Pro, but heavier with junk. Hose clamps, spare bulbs, a sandwich in yesterday's news. The tape on his reel matched our fibers, but so did everyone's. Anyone use your badge? Rado asked. Miro scratched his cheek. Last week, I lent it to Koloyan to fetch bolts after hours. He's not cleared for stores at night. The name slid into my notes. Koloyan who? Koloyan Dobrev, contractor, he said. He hustles. Finds parts when procurement sleeps. Sometimes he stands in for late shifts. I asked about vests. He rolled his eyes. They walk, he said. A new hire takes one home and forgets. Some guys keep a spare in their trunk like lucky socks. Petya examined his gloves. Clean enough. No bleach, only oil and dust. He watched her work with the patience of men used to inspections that catch nothing and still fray nerves. Miro gave us Koloyan's number and a shrug. He's useful, he said. He knows shortcuts. Management hates him until they need him. His grin faded when we showed him Mila's photo. He looked away. I've got sisters, he said. If someone used our kit to do this, he doesn't work with us again. It felt less like a promise than weather. As we left the turnout, a train shouldered past, lights washing over the tunnel like surf. I watched the cars and tried to imagine how a seat becomes a weapon and a door. Koloyan Dobrev met us in a car park behind a shuttered market, jacket zipped, though the night was mild. He smoked like it paid rent and watched our badges, not our faces. His hands were nicked and busy. I fill gaps, he said. You need bolts at midnight. I know who left some on a shelf. I move fast. Paperwork moves slow. Rado asked about the borrowed badge. Koloyan shrugged. One night, he said. Stores are a maze. No harm. He shifted his weight toward a hatchback with a roof rack. I asked about vests. He tilted his head. Vests are everywhere, he said. Throw one on. People don't look twice. That's the point, no? The grin didn't reach his eyes. Petya lifted the hatchback's boot. Inside lay a Pavlik Pro toolbox, a spare vest with a black sealant mark on the collar, and a half-used bottle labeled detergent in 3 languages. Kaloyan raised his hands, palms out, more annoyed than afraid. "I do odd jobs," he said. "People pay in gear. I clean tools." That bottle came from my mother's kitchen. Rado moved him from the car while I checked the toolbox. Wrenches, tape, a bag of screws, a folded metro map annotated with circles around platform benches. "You sell parts?" I asked. He kept his eyes on the fence. "Sometimes," he said. "Nobody misses what procurement forgets. Seats are a joke cheap hinges, bad retrofits. They come apart if you whisper." When I showed him Mela's photo, his mouth flattened. He took 1 step back, then another, and bolted toward the alley without looking. He didn't get far. The fence caught his jacket, and I caught his wrist. When the cuffs clicked, he finally looked at her photo again. "I never met her," he said, and shivered. Kaloyan sat in interview 2, with the slouch of a man refusing to fit any chair. Cigarette smell still clung to his hair, swimming under the fluorescent hum like static. He denied the girl, Serdica, everything except running. "You grabbed me," he said. "Running is smart when men with badges appear." He kept watching my notebook, not my face. Petya slid bags onto the table. Vest with black collar streak, Pavlik Pro Kit, detergent bottle. She spoke like a cashier counting change. "Your trunk is a moving shop." He shrugged, but his eyes flicked to the bottle. "That's for greasy hands," he said, "not bleach. Smell it." Petya already had. It was citrus, cheap and honest, not hospital sharp. Rado slid photos across. Mila on camera, a man in a vest, toolbox silhouette. "Tell us who borrows your gear," he said. "You hustle parts. You also hustle trust." Kaloyan's jaw set. "You think I'd stuff a girl in a seat?" he asked, voice thin. "You don't know me." He stared at the toolbox like it was a confession box. When he finally spoke, he gave us 2 names. A cousin who ran cleanups, a driver who swapped vests for cigarettes. Both could put a body under lights with no questions asked. Petya's preliminary swabs came back quick. No oxidizer traces on the vest collar, only sealant and dust. The bottle was detergent. As he said, his hands carried oil, not bleach. We searched his flat. Tools, receipts, nothing with the shine of stolen badges. A drawer held red shoelaces, but for sneakers he was old. None matched the hardened knot we bagged. Back at the board, guilt loosened from his square. Rado circled the operations liaison's name again. "Vests walk, but meetings don't." Someone told Mila where to stand, when to trust. Night cleaning crews treat the metro like a battlefield after the last passenger. We visited the depot where mops stand like rifles and drums of chemicals sit with tidy, lethal labels. Kaloyan's cousin, Rumen, wore rubber boots and a bored expression. He clocked in at midnight and clocked out at 4. Every night, no surprises. His palms smelled like disinfectant and onions. He admitted swapping vests. "We're short," he said. "Contractors borrow. Supervisors yell. Nothing changes." He looked at our still of the man in the vest and frowned like at a bad haircut. "That posture isn't Rumen," his foreman said, hovering. "Too straight." Foremen love posture. He steered us toward the supply cage, where bleach tablets lived in drums sealed with blue tape. Petya compared our residue with manufacturer sheets. The oxidizer at the scene matched the industrial tablets, not household liquid. You needed a key to access these drums. Keys tracked people. The logbook listed keys signed out by initials. 3 sets left at 22:30 on the night Mila died. 1 belonged to Rumen. The others read ND and MG, unfamiliar. "ND could be Danov," Petya said quietly. Rado's mouth thinned. "Management rarely signs for anything that stains their hands." MG matched no crew we knew from Serdica assignments. We found Miro Gashev's initials elsewhere, but not that night. He insisted he never signs chemicals. I hate the smell, he said. The logbook, however, loved him enough to disagree. Danev's alibi arrived by email. He was at a budget meeting off-site. Calendar invites woven with people who preferred spreadsheets to tunnels. His badge didn't ping any platform. We bagged copies of the logs and left with the taste of bleach clinging to our throats. Keys track people, but people borrow keys the way vests wander, without leaving apologies. I kept returning to the crescent bruise on Mila's cheek. Rings are signatures people forget they're wearing. I began watching hands, not faces, as we walked through Metrotech's glass corridors. Danev wore no ring. His palms were pale, nails squared by a hygienist. He met our questions with clipped politeness. Initials can be copied, he said. Logs aren't holy writ. Who has your keys? Rado asked. Assistants sometimes, he admitted. Chemical access is shared during audits. He said audit like scripture, and glanced at a framed certificate that proved nothing useful. On the shop floor, technicians flashed metal, the way some men flash smiles. Signets, skull, plain bands. I made a list. Miro wore a battered band on a chain under his shirt. Borislav's fingers were naked, knuckles scarred by machines. Kaloyan wore a cheap ring you win at a petrol station claw game. It wasn't big enough to bruise a crescent on a cheek. Petya analyzed the knot in the red lace. Not a bow. A constrictor knot, tightens under strain, common among electricians, riggers, paranoid campers. It matched fibers on Mila's wrists. Who ties like that? She asked in the lab, frown deepening. Rado paged through personnel files for certifications that taught hands mean knots. Rigging, climbing, theater staging, electrical cable management. One name popped. NG, not Goshev, but Marianne Georgiev, a contractor listed as stage tech before maintenance. Recent hire, cleared for night operations. His vest assignment noted missing. ND and MG, I said, tapping the log image. One influential, one invisible. People like that make elegant crimes. One opens doors, the other closes lids. We pulled Georgiev's file and address. His photo showed a mild man with strong hands. The note said he fixed what didn't want to hold and enjoyed the work too much. Georgiev's building overlooked a tram depot, the windows vibrating when steel kissed steel. A neighbor cracked hers and sniffed like a cat after the doorbell chimed twice and settled. He sleeps days, she said. Quiet, carries ropes. She mimed a coil over her shoulder, a gesture too practiced to be a guess. Helps me fix my blinds. We entered with a warrant and patient steps of people who don't want to surprise the wrong thing. The flat was neat. Tools ranked like soldiers. A coil of red cord on a hook. Not shoelaces. Paracord, sun-faded. On the workbench lay a spool of cloth-backed tape, the same brand we'd bagged. A vest hung from a chair, collar marked with a black sealant streak. The toolbox was Pavlik Pro, foam cutouts, holes empty where screws lived. A train seat hinge sat open on the table like a puzzle mid-solved, cheaper alloy pitted by stress. Petya photographed everything. Rado opened a drawer and found a ring box without a ring. The velvet carried abrasive dust, not romance. Beside it lay a signet head detached from a shank. The bathroom cabinet held detergent and bleach tablets crushed into powder inside a jar without a label. He had turned the Metro's cleaner into his own pocket weather. On the fridge sat a magnetized schedule. Green lines circled on 3 nights, including Milo's death. Serdica held a small star and marker, ink rubbed once and retraced. We waited. When Georgiev came home, he set his keys down and stopped breathing the instant he saw us. Hands braced on the doorframe, he measured exits without moving. He tried to smile. It failed halfway. I fix things, he said. Seats, lights, Accidents. He watched our eyes when he said accidents and seemed to enjoy the measurement. Interview room 1 felt smaller with Georgiev inside it. He arranged his hands on the table like tools, flat, clean, waiting for instructions. He didn't ask for a lawyer. Rado began with the vest. Georgiev admitted the collar streak. Sealant drips, he said. You wipe and it stains. Nobody cares unless a camera does. His voice was calm, almost bored. We moved to the bleach powder in his bathroom. He called it cleaning for mold. Petya mentioned oxidizer burns that had freckled his gloves. He shrugged. Gloves are cheaper than lungs. I showed him the signet head. Where's the ring? He smiled without humor. It broke, he said. Machine snagged it. I kept the top for luck. Who wears rings underground? Mila Strateva, I said, laying her photo down. The smile vanished. He looked at her like studying a diagram. Student, he said. Observers slow us down. Management loves them. Did you meet her at Serdica? Rado asked. He breathed in and out like he'd practiced. I saw her, he said. She asked questions. I told her to keep distance. Did you put her in the seat? Petya asked. His eyes narrowed. Seats swallow phones, he said. They don't swallow people. Someone with a key panel and panic could, maybe. He leaned forward. You think technicians kill? We fix bad retrofits so passengers don't bleed on your shoes. Those hinges crack under children. That batch should have been pulled last year. He admitted tightening that latch earlier, then claimed he left when a call rerouted him. Logs suggested otherwise. His badge pinged near Serdica again near midnight, a tiny betraying blink. When we pressed, he whispered, I wasn't alone, and watched the two-way mirror like it might nod. Someone carries authority to make anything look official. I only carry screws. We brought Danev in under the polite word conversation. He wore a new tie and an old patience. His mouth smiled. His eyes filed motions. He accepted water and moved it twice. Your initials are in the chemical log, Rado began. Danev didn't blink. 2 letters aren't ownership, he said. We have another, N.D. Nadezhda Demova, my assistant. She handles cages. Demova arrived small and brisk, hair clipped back, eyes computing outcomes. She confirmed the signature. I signed the keys at 22:30, she said. Per request from Mr. Georgiev. He claimed an urgent clean. Did you give him the tablets? Petya asked. No, Demova said. I authorized access. He collected from the cage. We track keys because cabinets fail and people invent reasons. Danev interlaced his fingers. No ring. You see? He said. Systems can be abused. We can't chain every door. He was correct and somehow used correctness as an alibi. Were you at Serdica that night? I asked. He showed calendar invites like lineage. Off-site budget meeting. Faces in tiny circles. A time-stamped selfie from a bland conference room. The selfie's reflection in the glass wall showed his cuff and the edge of a phone. The clock behind him read 20-3-0-7. Enough to make Serdica impossible without teleportation. Does Georgiev report to you? Rado asked. Indirectly, he said. He's subcontracted. He fixes seating modules. He complains about hinges, loudly, because he thinks shouting replaces procurement. We played Georgiev's line. I wasn't alone. Danev shrugged. Technicians move in packs, he said. They drag watchers like puppies. I meet stakeholders, not hardware. After they left, Petya studied the selfie again, zooming into pixels until time bled. Look at the cuff, she said. A faint smear of black sealant crossed the white like a misprint. Petya tested the smear from Danev's cuff. It matched the sealant on our vest collar. Polyurethane black, batch tagged to a retrofit order signed 3 months ago by Metrotech Operations. Common? Rado asked. Common enough to be useless in court? she said, but useful for narrowing hands that touched both paper and hinge. She pinned the test strip beside our stills. We read Georgiev's background deeper. Stage tech, yes. Also an incident report from a theater where a sandbag dropped during rehearsal. No injury. His note blamed worn knots with contempt. Mila's emails revealed another scene. She'd pressed Metrotech about the hinge failures, copying a procurement analyst who stopped replying. Her last draft used words like accountability and rush orders. Vesey remembered a call Mila took the night before. She said a manager finally agreed to show her the seat guts, Vesey said. She was excited. She said he sounded relieved. We considered a sting. Petya proposed a controlled run, a train seated with cameras and a seat left purposely loose. Invite maintenance. Watch who looks at cavities like doors. Transit agreed with weary speed. Everything is an experiment after midnight anyway. We chose Serdica, same platform, same car series, same stupid latch with new teeth. Before the sting, we returned to the ring. Dr. Stoyanova measured the crescent on Mila's cheek. The arc matched the width of Georgiev's signet head more than a plain band. Could be from any signet, she warned. Skin remembers shape, not initials. Still, the velvet dust in his box held microflecks of the same seat alloy. Rings and metal gossip. We split duties. I took the platform. Petya wired the car. Rado prepped warrants. The city sealed its mouth and listened like a witness, unwilling to choose sides yet. Serdica at 1 a.m. has the formal quiet of a museum. Our bait car idled with lights dim, doors open. Paper paths marked nothing. Cameras hid in air vents. Georgiev arrived first, alone, toolbox at his side. He wore a fresh vest and gloves too clean. He glanced at the seat and then the corners, noting angles like a surveyor. He didn't start work. He waited. 5 minutes later, a second vest approached from the concourse, hood up, walking with management certainty. The stride said authority, even if the face hid. I watched from the far bench, station cap low. Petya murmured measurements into my ear. Heart rates, distance, the tempo of a man trying not to look like he's waiting. The second vest spoke low. Georgiev shifted, unhappy. We caught fragments when they leaned over the loose latch. Fast, said the hood. No paper, Georgiev answered. It won't hold. He popped the panel with practiced ease and paused, not reaching inside. He was looking at a grave dug, or remembering one. His shoulders set the way men harden before bad work. Cameras, Georgiev warned. The hooded one turned, scanned, found only walls. Then screw and go, he said. Same as before, Rado moved then. Uniforms stepped from two ends like curtains closing. The hood ran. Georgiev didn't. He slid his hands wide and let the toolbox drop with a clatter like exercises ending. Petya pulled the hood back on the platform tiles. Not Danov, not anyone from the roster. A driver we'd interviewed the first night, pale one, eyes blown wide with fright. He started crying before the cuffs bit. I called the stops, he said. They told me where to slow. I didn't put her in there. I just kept time. The driver's name was Valery. Without the hood and panic, he looked younger, like a man who saves for a washing machine and worries the motor will still fail. He kept saying he didn't touch her. We hadn't accused him of touching. He had slowed, he had held doors, he had announced a maintenance pause and watched the time die. Who told you? Rado asked. Valery stared at the table like numbers might appear. Calls come in, he said. Sometimes radio, sometimes phone. I saved a number under green sticker. Petya slid a bagged prepaid handset from his locker box. Call history showed short bursts on the right nights, a voice that said when to stretch a station into a harbor. Did you see Georgiev? I asked. Valery nodded, miserable. He works fast, he said. He thinks of the seats like puzzles that lie. He hates the hinges. Everybody hates the hinges. Who else? Rado pressed. Valeri swallowed. Other man wore a vest without name patches, he said. He stood like a supervisor. People move for that posture. Even me. We asked about the night Mila died. Valeri clenched his fists. They said unscheduled inspection, he said. I held Serdica 30 seconds longer, then again at the next stop. Enough to open, close. Did you see the girl? She was with the vest, he said. She smiled at me, like students do when they think trains are kinder than buses. I didn't know. A green sticker number bounced through call forwards. Procurement desk, then a shared phone in operations, then silence. Systems hiding inside systems, like seats hiding hollows. Valeri signed a statement. He would not be our villain, but he would be our proof that someone choreographed the city for 7 minutes and called it maintenance. Georgie's silence broke when we put Valeri's statement on the table. He read it twice, then traced the margin with a fingernail like he was measuring a gap. I built the cavity, he said. Not the plan. He looked tired rather than guilty, a man angry at being stupid in the company of smarter evil. I didn't choose the girl. How? Petya asked. He described it calmly. Loosen latch, pry panel, anchor cloth tape across wrists and ankles, feed into hollow with knees first, compress, screw mismatched bolts, because the kit wasn't complete. She was alive, I said. He nodded once, jaw rigid. She begged, he said. I told her to hold still so it wouldn't hurt more. The hooded man said we were late. Who sent you? Rado asked. Georgie's eyes flicked to the mirror. Green sticker, he said. A voice that knows rosters and where cameras sleep. He talked like meetings. Why keep the signet head? Petya asked. Because it broke the night before, he said. I didn't want it found near her. He swallowed. It hit her when she fought. You can name your partner, I said. He considered the door, the ceiling, the folder. If I name him, he said, he'll still be in charge of next week's budget. He finally leaned in. They use audits like keys, he said. They visit platforms to count bolts and leave instructions no one signs. They say words like accountability with teeth. Name, Rado said. Georgiev breathed once. Operations liaison, he whispered. Not the tie. The deputy. The man who writes the schedule when the boss travels. He gave us a name. It sat on the table like another tool, simple and sharp. We stood, and the city seemed to tilt, as if a train were arriving too fast. He gave us the name like a screw placed on the table. Stoyan Petrov, Deputy Operations Liaison, the man who writes rosters when his boss travels and signs nothing in ink. Rado didn't blink. We'd been circling a shadow that fit that shape. Procurement emails, chemical logs, green sticker calls routed through operations. The wires all crossed near Petrov's desk. We filed for warrants before dawn. Petya drafted the affidavit while I typed an addendum tying the signet bruise to Georgiev's broken head. Paper isn't justice, but it opens doors. By 8, we walked into Metrotech with a judge's dry signature. Danev met us at reception, pale with contained fury. You'd better be right, he said. I'm losing a month to this. Petrov's office smelled of coffee and cold plastic. His chair sat low, designed to make visitors feel tall. He wasn't there. His calendar showed field audit in 3 identical blocks. It imaged his workstation. Petya bagged a prepaid handset from a drawer labeled training. The call history mirrored Valeri's. 4 numbers, short bursts, midnight habits disguised as logistics. A locker key hid behind a photo of a team-building hike. The metal tag read G17. The grid map in the basement matched. Storage row, end unit, out of camera view. Inside the locker we found vests without patches, extra latch screws, cloth tape, bleach tablets ground to powder, and a signet shank without its face. Evidence arranged like conscience. Rado's phone buzzed. Patrol had eyes on Petrov's car near Slivnitsa, parked across from a hardware store. He was inside, paying cash for screws and markers, calm as weather. We spread his desk calendar and watched the pattern bloom. Every audit aligned with trains delayed a minute longer than schedule in a station where hinges complained. Petrov came out with a paper bag and a smile rehearsed for suppliers. He saw us and traded it for indifference, the safest currency in public. Audit, he said, lifting the bag. Rado showed the warrant. Petrov's gaze landed on the judge's stamp and slid away. You misunderstand my role, he said. Operations is paperwork. I don't touch hinges. I pointed at the locker key in an evidence bag. G17 disagrees, I said. His mouth tightened at the tag number. Micro-expressions rarely confess, but they mark the path. He pivoted toward the underground parking entrance and chose speed over talk. We followed. Petya's radio crackled, units sealing the exits. Petrov kept moving anyway, head down, bag clutched. He cut through the mall corridor and dropped to the station by service stairs, a route only staff favor. The platform breathed cold. A train lamped the tunnel and grew. Petrov tossed a phone toward the rails. It bounced, didn't fall, clattered under a bench. A bad throw or a sudden mercy. He looked almost surprised and then angry. I closed the distance, shoulder into his ribs, both of us skidding on tile polish. The bag split. Screws jittered across the floor like hail. Markers rolled into the gap. He fought quiet, disciplined, the way men fight when they believe losing is temporary. Handcuffs clicked. He finally spoke. You're arresting the wrong man, he said. Everyone wanted these hinges hidden. We read him rights. The platform clock ticked in bureaucratic seconds. Commuters watched carefully without watching at all, the civic skill of a city that's seen enough. Petya retrieved the phone. Inside sat a green sticker SIM, warm from his pocket. The wallpaper was the default sky blue of disposability. The contacts were labeled like chores. In interview 3, Petrov sat straight and empty, a man determined to be an outline. He asked for coffee and a copy of the warrant, then arranged both side by side. Rado began with the locker. Petrov called it contingency stock. Every supervisor keeps extras, he said. Paper lags behind broken things. He spoke like a memo. We placed the SIM beside the bagged signet shank. Petrov glanced once. I lost that months ago, he said. Rings catch on things. His eyes didn't go to the camera, which made sense. Petya slid call charts across the table, colored lines stacking nights. Green sticker starts from your phone, forwards through operations, lands with drivers, she said. You choreograph time. Delays happen, he answered. If drivers hold because I ask for inspection, that's legal. He met my stare. Someone died. That isn't. Someone you met, I said. Mila emailed you about hinges. You scheduled her visit. You sent a vest without a name badge. You created the moment. He leaned back, jaw working. She was supposed to observe, he said. I needed notes to push procurement. Budget hates safety without scandal. He chose each word like it had edges. And bleach? Rado asked. You signed chemical keys, Petya added. He shrugged. Cleaning follows work. Mess follows shortcuts. It was an answer and a shield. We matched the signet shank to the head from Georgiev's flat. Petrov watched the pieces meet without expression. He took that, he said. He breaks things and keeps parts. When we left the room, he stared at the table. He thought in rosters, dependencies, scheduled lies. If he hadn't ordered murder, he had ordered the stage and sold the tickets. We pulled deeper on procurement, the part of the city where money turns from numbers into bolts. Emails showed a hinge batch fast-tracked after a friendly lunch and a signed photo. The alloy failed in tests that were then relabeled non-representative. Petrov's name slid through the yaw. Threads like lubricant, not overt, but present whenever speed beat caution. Mila had CC'd him twice, polite and precise. She asked why retrofits skipped a stress check. She attached photos of fine cracks like spiderwebs at the hinge root. He never replied. Petya cross-matched screw threads from our bait bag to the mismatched heads in Mila's seat cavity. The burrs aligned. The pattern of hurried torque lived in both places. The bleach powder from the locker carried a corrosion inhibitor unique to the depot's current supplier. Under UV, the residue beneath the seat frame sang the same chemical song. We found message drafts on Petrov's desktop, unsent but saved automatically. One rehearsed a statement about isolated maintenance deviations. Another suggested audits with external visibility. Georgiev's phone, under warrant now, held a text from an unknown number. Tonight, Sertica. Observer present. Demonstrate latch risk. The timestamp sat 20 minutes before Mila validated her ticket. Valeri's route logs showed microholes near platforms tied to Petrov's forwarded calls. A pattern of inspection windows hid inside the timetable like an extra heartbeat. Rado traced payments from the hinge supplier to a consultancy where Petrov's sister-in-law was conveniently talented. It smelled like sun-dried corruption, small and familiar. We walked back into interview 3, with the thread now tangled around Petrov's wrists, even if the cuffs weren't there yet. He watched the stack of printouts grow and finally blinked. Petrov spoke first, like a man refusing to drown politely. "I wanted a demonstration," he said. "A latch failure during audit hours. Something procurement couldn't ignore. Not this. Rado let silence work. It does the heavy lifting." Petrov filled it. "We've staged defects before," he said. "Empty seats, loosened panels, photographs that shame budgets. You texted observer present," I said. "You scheduled a student to watch your theater. Then you sent a vest without a name. That isn't advocacy. That's cover." He looked down. "She wasn't supposed to go inside," he said. The word inside tasted wrong in the room. Georgiev improvises. He thinks drama is engineering. He said he only wanted outrage in photographs, not screams that linger. Petya played the sting audio, the hooded voice saying, "Same as before." Petrov's face tightened. "Before meant pop the panel and show slop," he said. "Not a coffin." "Bleach tablets?" Rado asked. "Vests without patches? Burner sims?" Petrov's hands flattened. "You call them crimes. I call them leverage. Nobody listens to memos." "And when she fought?" "I asked." He exhaled, long. "I wasn't on the platform," he said. The driver slowed. The technician panicked. The window closed. "I told them to secure the panel and walk." "Knowing she was alive," Petya said. He didn't answer. Sometimes silence is an admission shaped like caution. He watched the table and finally nodded. Once. He tried one last defense. "If not for the hinges," he said, "none of this exists." He was right, and also building a staircase to nowhere. We arrested him for conspiracy and murder. Words on paper would lag again, but the cuffs closed fine. Outside, a train slid past, every seat suddenly a possible secret. Georgiev watched Petrov's arrest through the interview room glass like a stagehand finally seeing the actors. He didn't smile. Relief looks different on men who fix things. He offered detail for concessions. Not freedom. He knew that ship had no seats, but consideration. He wanted truth cataloged, so the girl didn't become a rumor about trains. He described the seat like a machine he hated. The hinge that creaked at 30 degrees. The latch that bit. The cavity too perfect for someone with the wrong patience. He showed us where he'd snapped mismatched screws along the tunnel edge, flicking them into the ballast. We walked the line at dawn, magnets dragging. 3 heads answered. He led us to a drain behind a staircase where he'd shoved the roll of tape. Petya fished it out, wet and stubborn, fibers still matching the mess on Mila's wrists. He admitted the knot and didn't excuse it. "I tie what holds," he said. "I should have tied nothing." His voice finally carried weight that wasn't only defiance. We asked why he stayed in the sting. "I was tired," he said. "Tired of being the only guilty pair of hands. I wanted the voice to stand next to me under lights." Rado sketched the plea outlines in words we could stand behind. Testimony, locations, confirmation of Petrov's calls. In return, a judge could see cooperation instead of only cruelty. He signed. His signature looked like a cable tie cut clean, no fray. He returned to his cell and folded into the bed as if finally allowed to be small. Outside, the depot woke. Men in vests smoked and swapped stories about budget meetings. The city's day shift doesn't feel night crimes. It inherits their fixes and moves on. The courtroom felt smaller than the station. People sit closer when guilt is described in full sentences. Petrov wore a suit that made him look like a lecturer on safe topics. The prosecutor kept it simple. Calls, keys, chemicals, vests, delays. A rope made from small fibers. Petya explained oxidizers and inhibitors to a jury that nodded like students who want to pass. Valery testified with a voice that wobbled, then held. He had slowed trains when told. He hadn't touched the girl. He watched the floor while saying the words that moved clocks. Georgiev walked through the mechanics without sparing himself. He said inside again and closed his eyes. The room understood that a thing can be true and still sound impossible. Dr. Stoyanova traced the crescent bruise. She held up the signet head and the shank, cousins reunited under lights. "Consistent," she said. "Not exclusive. Truth knows its limits." The hinge supplier's consultant took the stand and sweated. Payments are innocent when described with enough nouns. The emails pulled them back into verbs with intent. Petrov's attorney argued policy, argued culture, argued rot that one man didn't invent. He avoided the sim like it was smearable ink and called our sting theater. The word fit poorly. Danov testified for the state, his tie finally finding rain. He owned his oversight and drew a clean line at Petrov. It wasn't heroism, just the necessary spine of survival. Rado sat beside me and counted breaths. Trials are waiting rooms with better chairs. We watched a city's systems climb into language and looked surprised at their reflection. When the verdict came, it sounded like a bracket closing. Petrov, guilty of conspiracy and murder. Georgiev, guilty with recommendation for leniency. The room exhaled as if a train had passed. After the verdict, Metrotech threw money at the holes where ethics should have been. Hinges were pulled in a rush that finally matched the haste that installed them. Audits grew numbers. Vests grew name patches that didn't peel. Keys no longer signed out by initials, so light a thief could wear them like perfume. Systems learned to leave tracks. Professor Sabev organized a memorial in the faculty courtyard. Students lifted models of trains and set candles in the seats. The wax pooled like small, patient promises. Vesey spoke last. She read from Mila's notes, a paragraph about how furniture teaches us about power because it decides where bodies may rest. She didn't cry until the last word. Transit replaced the seat series entirely. New modules arrived with hinges that looked like they wanted to live. Technicians grumbled, but their hands relaxed around tools. Valery returned to the cab after suspension and training. He learned to refuse unofficial holds, to let the clock be a shield. He nodded to us from a platform one morning, sober. Georgiev wrote a statement for the court that read like a spec sheet with guilt. He accepted his years, asked for vocational programs, suggested a redesign for latch inspections. Petya built a small internal course on evidence preservation for maintenance crews. She borrowed Mila's phrase, "Seats talk." The slide showed scuff arcs inside a blue plastic shell. I rode the green line one night and sat across from a seat with a plaque, in memory of a student who asked the right questions. People read it and looked at the floor. The city kept moving. It always does. But the train felt different, heavier by one story that wouldn't fit under a panel anymore, no matter how hard someone pushed. We met at Serdica on a Tuesday afternoon because it felt wrong to only visit the place at night. Crowds make crime look smaller, which is a mercy some days. Rado brought coffee and a story about a bicycle theft ring that used bakery bags for signals. Petya laughed and then didn't. We were all still listening for the wrong sounds. We stood near the bench where Petrov's phone first failed him. The tile had been scrubbed, but my feet remembered the slide, the scattered screws snapping like hail. Systems don't care, Rado said, not angry. People do, until they're tired. He watched the map board where a red light blinked without drama. Maintenance in progress. Petya pointed at a new sign under the platform clock. Unscheduled delays require on-radio authorization. She had written the protocol. Words can lift or press down. These breathed. A family waited where Mila had waited. The mother checked a stroller strap with hands that knew knots. The father folded a metro map into a rough flag against boredom. I thought about Georgie's line. I tie what holds. It sounded earnest and broken now, the kind of sentence you might tattoo and then regret when context arrives. We walked the length of the platform and back. People made space for our coats without seeing us as anything except obstacles. That's fine. Invisible is useful after trials. At the stairs, VC appeared, breathless, a bag of groceries in one hand. She had chosen this station on purpose. We hugged like people who didn't plan to. She showed us a postcard sheet had printed, a drawing of a seat that opens, with a warning printed small along the hinge. She said she mails one to every procurement office she finds. On my next night shift, the bleach smell returned in a different key. Clean, not covering. The air felt like a station that had learned to document its own midnight. I rode 2 stops in the bait car that was no longer bait. The latch shut with a click that sounded confident. Confidence in hardware is a relief that doesn't photograph well. The driver announced an unscheduled inspection and immediately read a reference number. People rolled their eyes and stayed. I sat across from a young woman reading architectural notes in pencil. She underlined the word load and boxed the phrase expected failure. She looked up once, checked the map, kept reading. A cleaner passed, pushing a cart labeled with his name. He saw me checking and nodded like colleagues. He had keys on a coil that would snap back if borrowed. At Serdica, I stepped off and walked to the seat that had once been a door someone closed on a life. The plaque was small, the words plain, the metal cool. I remembered opening that panel and the way hair slid out first. Memory edits, but sometimes it preserves wrong details, like anchors you agreed to carry. Rado texted from another line. A false alarm on a smoke sensor. Resolved. Petya sent a photo of her slide deck, taped to a depot wall and a caption. Seats still talk. I touched the edge of the seat and then put my hands away. I don't like ceremonies. Still, I said her name, quiet, because names organize the mess into something you can lift. The train sighed in and opened its doors. I got on. City to city, station to station, we keep trying to make the places where we sit safe enough to think.